Hello, I'm Telegon, and I promised a little while ago that I promised myself that I was gonna make some content, and I've been kind of like thinking about the new expansion wish list stuff a lot, and I thought I'd make one as well, in case anyone was interested. And I've been kind of like back and forth. Like I've seen a lot of stuff on Twitter, like of devs posting like, the team is really excited about this one, and it feels kind of special as the announcement is coming up. And I'm kind of like I've been trying to like reconcile that feeling with the feeling that I usually have um, surrounding World of Warcraft, is that it's like the development and design of this game is pretty lazy and negligent um, most of the time regarding gameplay first and um, the like quality of life for players when like interacting with the new systems and new zones each season and rep grinds and all that stuff. And so I've been like trying to like reason in my head whether I should be like excited about the announcement and like optimistic with like how their design direction has been going recently, which has been pretty positive compared to the past uh, regarding stuff like covenants and the soulbind conduit restrictions, legendaries, mythic plus affixes, all that stuff. Um, Rep grinds. Uh, and I think um, going into tomorrow, I'm pretty optimistic. I'm like, I kind of see it as like a last chance for Blizzard at this point, um, to make good design, well designed systems off the get go, with like player quality of life and the fun that the player is actually going to have interacting with these systems in mind. Um, so I'm pretty hopeful that what we're going to see tomorrow um, is going to support my optimism. Um, so yeah, so I'm pretty excited. Every time I said I'm not going to get excited, and here I am. So, and take that as a grain of salt. But I guess the way to start is like the wish list. This is going to be a very ramble style if you haven't picked up on it today. I haven't wrote a script or anything. It's just going to be me talking about my thoughts regarding what I want to see tomorrow from the expansion announcement and what I want to see in the new expansion. Some of it's going to be like more esoteric with design changes I want to see, like core design regarding certain systems and how certain classes or how classes play in general and stuff like that. Some of it's going to be more overarching. Um, so I guess we'll start with raids, probably the best part of WoW, I think, in terms of quality. Um, their encounter design like consistently knocks it out of the park. Um, I don't really have any. I don't really have any like massive criticism of the raid design outside of the fact that obviously like this raid was far too hard for um the general player base, and it's like remained far too hard for too long, I think. um it was pretty good, pretty well tuned, uh not even well tuned, it was like well designed for the skill of world first players, I think. That's how I would put it. Um, However, it wasn't well tuned for world first players when um, what was it, like 3 of the last 5 bosses require. Okay, so Halandris needed a 10% HP nerf. Anduin needed HP nerfs with like as a result of his intermission changes and a bunch of other changes. Lords of Dread was killed 30 seconds to a minute after the range timer, and Raglan was killed. Raglan was fine. No, Raglan received a 6% HP nerf. So, and a damage done nerf as well. So I don't think this raid was super well tuned at all from that perspective. And obviously the Halandris bombs was extremely egregious to have where it was placed in the raid. And you can see that by like the amount of guilds have still killed it now after a bunch of nerfs. And you would never convince me that there weren't going to be 3 more bombs in the last phase before they saw like how hard it was. So yeah, but that's pretty much my only qualms with the raid, is that they don't play test enough under the correct circumstances, and like play test to actually break the fights and find bugs and fix them preemptively. Apparently they have new technology for tuning the raid HP for bosses like in real time based off like the damage we're actually doing, and that's pretty interesting. I'm interested to see how that plays out. Like theoretically it should be very cool. But yeah, from a design perspective, I think the raid is great. Most of the mechanics were sick, especially later bosses. I really enjoy it. Like as always, I've enjoyed like every raid this expansion, and last expansion actually. So in terms of like the general raid design, I think as long as they keep it up and maybe improve the tuning a bit and make a good difficulty curve for the expansion, that'll be really good. Moving on to Mythic Plus. Obviously, those are the 2 parts of the game that I interact with the most. In terms of analysts, I probably interact with them the most, outside of maybe Truefire. I'm not sure who Echo's other analyst is and how much he plays the game, but I probably am the most active in game besides him. And I definitely raid and do Mythic Plus the most. I haven't rated Progress the last 2 tiers, obviously, because I've been working with a Race to World First Guild. But I have been playing Mythic Plus in the you're gonna see me cheat. Oh no. In the like downtime and like after the tier's over. So I have more insight into those like parts of the game than something like PvP, so I'm not gonna comment on PvP at all. But Mythic Plus I have a lot of qualms with. There's a bunch of things I think are like intensely unhealthy for the game. I really dislike having to go in and farm the same trinket multiple seasons in a row from the same dungeon. I just hate it. Like I hate that I've already done like 10 Theater of Pains, I think, this season since I started playing again after the race. And I'm just chained there. I'm just chained to Theater and Plaguefall until I get then higher elemental trinkets from the new season. And I think maybe like a way around this is just make new dungeon trinkets each season, so this doesn't occur. That's like the only like spitball idea I have, but I really dislike having to farm the same trinkets over and over again. Obviously, I think it's only trinkets and weapons that have this problem, with like you wanting to like really target farm them, like a Poxstorm. For Demon Hunters and Plaguefall, I know people wanted to target farm, but it's mostly trinkets, and like I think almost every spec wants to do it for at least one trinket. And that kind of ties into with the raid trinkets. I think their trinket design in general could improve. I'd rather trinkets be on the like err on the more powerful side than on the like generally weaker side, so that like multiple seasons of dungeon trinkets are just better than raid trinkets. But like I said, I think that could be alleviated by just making different trinkets for each season come from dungeons. And I think that'd be pretty cool because I think trinkets are like very fun if designed well. So I think it'd be more. I think it'd be more fun for like fun interactive trinkets to come from dungeons as well, and then for them not to be the same every season, so that you have to refarm them. That's my qualm with the Mythic Plus loot. In terms of affixes, obviously the big conversation is fortified and tyrannical. Like, what do they really add? Add to the dungeons, and then I have actually bigger columns with the whole system. Regarding affixes, I do not see the value in affixes at all. If you take a look through the affix like list, I think very few of them add anything to the experience. Most of them just become like an annoyance in your key, or it just takes X amount of time off your timer. I don't think either of those are fun. So going into the next expansion, I actually would value a rework of the affix system higher than just removing fortified and tyrannical. I'd rather they rework the affixes because like I just hate like checking this like the night whatever the next week is gonna be for affixes and being like, oh, it's bolstering. Yeah, I don't want to play that week. Or it's necrotic. Oh, I'm tanking. I don't want to play that week. Oh, it's storming. I'm gonna have a really fun time in melee this week. Or explosive. Oh, I'm the roger. I'm the one healer that has to do all the explosives. Obviously, that's just like I don't think that's fun. I don't think it adds anything to the gameplay of Mythic Plus. I also don't think Tyrannical and Fortified add anything to gameplay. I don't think, oh, Trash is arbitrarily harder this week, or Tyrannical is arbitrarily harder, or the bosses are arbitrarily harder this week. I don't think either of those are fun. And to offer like a solution to that, I think Kiss Curse affixes are good. I'd rather see affixes that you can interact with in a positive way. That like present a problem, but also like have a solution that doesn't just take like subtract time off the key. And honestly, even just things you have to do for buffs, I think that's also an interesting avenue to explore. Like I'd much rather do stuff in a key that makes me more powerful in a certain way, than just have to deal with like a certain thing for the entire thing. And usually the other problem with the way affixes work is only one person has to deal with them. Unless you're in like a coordinated group like Sanguine, like if you're a Blood Death Knight, you can deal with Sanguine all by yourself. Like you need no interaction from anybody else at all. With less with tanks with less utility, then you need to coordinate or have your DPS players and healers be awake that when they have like knocks and stuff like that. But that those things are present without Sanguine. Like the need to use utility is present like or should be present like naturally in dungeon design. And obviously like the person that has to interact with it the most is the tank. Same thing with Grievous, like literally just a healer affix, unless you consider like players like off healing themselves to like get it off them in between pulls and stuff like that. So like personally, I'd rather see a complete rework of the Sanguine affix, or not Sanguine, but affixes in general, with the idea of like player interactivity and like quality of life gameplay, having fun, like actually completing the key instead of just like zoning into the key, like what annoying thing do I have to deal with this week, or like pulling a pack and it's like, oh, what annoying thing is in this pack this week, or like beguiling, like yeah, another conversation about like seasonal affixes. It's like these seasons are very long to have like one static seasonal affixes. Like if it was like if it was those three, it was like 4 to 6 months. I'd prefer 4 personally, but 4 to 6 months, like having one affix be the same the entire time would be fine. But like 8 to 12 months of the same affix, I feel like it just gets really boring. That's a segue into like I personally want WoW to go in a direction of shorter seasonal cycles, where we get new content more often, but maybe we get less of it. Instead of like an 11 boss raid, maybe we get a 6 boss raid, 8 boss raid, somewhere in there. Like I'd rather have a 4 to 6 month season and have a 6 to 8 boss raid, or even a 5 to 8 boss raid, depending. And I think that would come with a couple benefits where you get to have more variety in Mythic Plus with having a seasonal affix be changed more frequently, and I think that's like very cool and very interactive for people who enjoy Mythic Plus. And then I also think that's cool and like enjoyable for raiders, because they don't have to spend as long progressing the tier. For Mythic raiders who are going to get Hoff or CE, they can pretty much like finish it and kind of be done. Or if you're worse skilled, then maybe that affects you negatively because you don't have as long to get it. Personally, I don't see that as a problem, but maybe other people do. But a lot of positives in the raid department, because you have to spend less time raiding each week once you're on farm, or if you're just a heroic guild. You don't have many of these fluff bosses like in the middle. Like at the beginning of this raid, you had a lot of bosses that just don't matter at all. Like obviously you need the first boss, but pretty much the second through like the Hoovam were just like kind of like, why did these exist? Obviously there needs to be some like lower difficulty bosses in the curve, but it just felt like the first 6 bosses were just like trivially easy, and then obviously the 7th boss was like impossible, and then they pretty much just stay that hard for the rest of the raid. So I feel like squishing that down would be healthy. I think most of the friction that comes with WoW is time. So people having to spend like less time raiding to get to the goal they want is good, and then less time in farm to keep up their characters for the next raid is also good. Well, it's kind of just a general argument in terms of for like shorter seasons. I'm not sure how PvP how PvPers like feel about this. Obviously, I don't really interact with this content at all. However, I think I've heard that they like would appreciate shorter seasons. I'm not sure if they'd where their preferences lie they're in like in terms of months, but would be interesting to hear. Moving on, the thing I really hope I doubt they're going to talk about this tomorrow, but I really hope they kind of revamp tanks and healers in terms of like their actual role in game a bit, mostly relating to Mythic Plus. Obviously, like tanking and healing in raids has some issues as well, but I think the issues are like the most pronounced in Mythic Plus. Tanking in Mythic Plus is just not fun. It's never fun. The few times it is fun is because you're like abusing a bug to do like a ton of damage, or your class is just kind of OP. Like the Guardian 4-piece being like overtuned. Like I'm sure that was fun, doing like 20k overall and stuff like that. And then Death Knight right now is like really strong, and that's pretty fun. But the problem goes like deeper than like surface level fun that those specs were having like during this patch. As a tank in Mythic Plus, you have to do everything. In terms of like coordination, you have to have memorized like every pack. You have to memorize the route. Like just to be frank, like you have to do the route. It's kind of expected you do like CC or you call CC. Pretty much, yeah. You have a lot of expectation on you. Also to just stay alive. And you just don't have the agency you used to on most classes. Nor do you really have like it's just too much burden on one of the roles to like perform. Like compared to DPS, like if a DPS dies, it's pretty much whatever. Most of the time, obviously, like in high keys, it matters more. But if you ever die in a tank, like unless you have like Echo MDI level coordination, in terms of like staying alive without a tank, like using immunities and like evasion type of sort of stuff like that. The pull's probably over. Like you probably wiped, and you probably got to run back. If you have a bad route, like that's all up to the tank. And then, like aside from that, like you just don't do any damage generally. Threat has been like a massive problem this expansion, and this is like coming back to a change they made post Legion where they reduced the threat modifier from like 1200 to like 400. They slowly like bumped it up a little bit. I think it's like at 800 right now or something. And that just feels terrible when DPS are like quadrupling or like 10xing your damage on a pack. It's just like impossible to maintain aggro when the DPS like scale that hard, and you just don't. In terms of tanks, like that's what I would want to see the most. I'd like to see an increase in agency for non-blood decay tanks. Like obviously they have the most agency like regarding like healing themselves and like utility in general. But I'd like to see an increase in agency for other tanks, as well as increase in utility. Also, I'd really like to see some kind of mechanic implemented to like encourage tanks to play a certain way. I'd really like to see something along the lines of Vengeance return to the game. Obviously, it can't be Vengeance because Vengeance is broken, but I'd really like to see tanks rewarded in some way for like performing their role well outside of just living and like completing the pull or completing the key, because like in the end it just doesn't feel good, and you have to deal with stuff like a lot of the affixes are like tank related in terms of like how much you pull or how you pull or like how you're like manipulating mobs. So I'd really like to see like some steps being taken in that direction for tanks. And it carries over to raid. Like you don't really feel rewarded for being a good raid tank. Like you're doing like the maximum damage you can. You're off healing on a paladin. You're using your utility correctly. You're not dying. Like that feels fine, but it doesn't feel good. Like it doesn't feel like you're topping the meters on as a DPS if you're just playing well as a tank. um, which has kind of led to them like a lower, like not many people want to play tank. It's just like the people that do play tank, most of them do it so they can get consistent groups or complete the content they want to complete, or because they feel like they have to. And I'd like to see that change for sure. Similar problem with healers in Mythic Plus regarding damage. I think that just like running through a dungeon pressing your healing buttons isn't very rewarding either. And I also don't think that it is like, I think a similar problem exists in raids where you just keep everyone alive, and maybe you toss out some lava bursts or Crusader strikes. You're throwing down Ashen Hollow, Hammer Wraths, when you don't have to be actively healing. Like, I don't think that feels very rewarding, and obviously like the gap in mitigation provided between the healers is also a problem. So I'd like to see like some of the parity there addressed, or lack of parity there addressed, in terms of like the gameplay loop of just healing versus healing and doing damage. And I wonder if there's like a vengeance style related design choice that could be implemented for healers to kind of give them more reward for playing well. In terms of class design, I think I'd really like to see a lot of this is kind of like entering the like pipe dream. Probably most of this is just not going to happen, but in terms of class design, I'd really like to see everything like across the board become more complicated, and like the variety in each of our kits like increased. I think that most specs right now are very simple and can be learned very quickly, because they all generally revolve around like the builder spender 2-minute 3-minute archetype. Like demonology is one of the more interesting specs in the game, and you still just do this like little ramp rotation, press demonic tyrant, and then do this like very very boring gameplay loop of generate spend that is only interesting because of the CDR you get from the legendary and having to like time your ramp so that like this comes off cooldown with your legendary at the appropriate time, and then you like just go back to builder spending. I think too many specs play like that. You have like some outliers like Frost Decay, which is one of my favorite playstyles in the game, like Breath Cinegrosa. I just wish there was more variety and complexity across all the WoW specs in general, and maybe even more like uniqueness in design. I think making some changes to most specs like along that vein, like a deep rooting, if you will, would go a long way in terms of like how fun classes are and specs are. I also think that there should be a long hard look at a lot of the talents, and how like quote unquote alive or dead they are. Demo Warlock is one of the best ones, where the 2 set for Demo Lock like enables you to make 2 challenge changes, which are kind of cool. Make the spec like extremely playable in dungeons, and very like, I'm not sure if like fun. It's not necessarily. It's kind of like less complex than it was before, but it like just changing your gameplay is also interesting. Like especially relating to talents, like having situational talents where in like different scenarios you should be taking different talents is pretty interesting, because I think it enables like a skill expression for the player, to know which talent is better in which scenario, and also why. So like the player that knows why will have like a significant amount of fun, and then the player just copying the player that also knows why. Um, at least there's like variance in gameplay there, as opposed to right now, which where like I would never swap off any of these talents except for these two. If I'm not running the implosion build, and then I like this talent. I guess is like kind of variable, but not like it's not like very meaningful at all. It's just like utility. Um, so I think that that's what I would like to see the most from spec design is an increase in general complexity and um, retuning or like redesigning of a lot of the talents um, that a lot of specs have that are like completely dead, haven't been played in like years or like multiple expansions. Um, Definitely what I'd like to see there. Player housing. I don't get why this is like controversial. Like I saw a tweet earlier that was like player housing. Do we want it? Do we not? And I was like, of course we want it. Like, is that even a question? And then I thought back to garrisons, and I was like, well, garrisons do suck. So I guess the thing with with player housing that needs to be like mentioned is needs to be done right, of course. It should be implemented in the coolest way possible. Every player should get to like design their own little space. Maybe have a guild hall where you can have your own little space, and that like moves with you, like regardless of the guild or something like that. Obviously, a more complex design talk, but as long as every player gets some agency and it's like customizable and pretty visual and like it makes you feel super cool. You can put up your like cutting edge trophies inside it and shit. As long as something like that, I feel like it'll be super fucking sick, and I don't see why you wouldn't want that. New season grinds. I put this on there because hate, I hate, I hated the Maw. I hated Korthia. I harbor some extreme dislike for the world quests that I'm doing now. Obviously the rep grind this tier was way different, way different than either the Maw or Korthia. But I'm gonna start off with the Maw and Korthia because I have been extremely critical of both of them, and I do not see any reason why Blizzard should gatekeep stuff behind time, like double legendary being gatekeeped keeps behind the campaign. This patch was so horrible. I felt like it was so boring and not cool for like non-world first guilds to hop into mythic progression and not have your double legendaries and then just the week after get them and just do 10% more damage for no reason. I don't see like why major patch systems like that would be whatever, and power should be gatekept by like lore um or anything like that. That was very uncool. But just going back to the other systems like previously, obviously Korthia was like mostly, I think it was just sockets and something like some conduit shit that you had to get exalted for there. A horribly designed rep, like abysmal. I was the one that did the most of the research with Kina from Method at the time for Korthia, and I honestly don't think that rep or zone had like any redeeming factors at all. Similar to the Maw, like what was good about the Maw? Like not only could you not mount for the entire like relevancy of the content, but you also couldn't stay there for more than I can't remember how exactly the eye worked, but I just like exploited it and stayed in there forever with like Deathgate. Um, so I hope that in the next expansion that the like I'm not against um grinding for power, but I was at the race world first, obviously for a month, and I started doing my world quest when I came back because I didn't have time during the race, and I haven't missed any. I think I missed like a day or something since I came back, so it's been like 2 weeks, and I'm like about to hit revered like in the next few days, and I'm just stuck with this 265 legendary until then. And then the other thing is that I had to do the campaign on all the characters that I wanted to play to get my double legendary. So I guess those are the two main qualms I have, is like having to grind for power is like why I would quit the game in the first place. And then the secondary thing is like I do not want to have I do not want to have to log into WoW every day. Um like give me a secondary activity I can do, like if you want to do 10 mythic plus a week to get my like weekly rep, or like 10 raid bosses a week to get my weekly like progress or whatever, that's fine. I can do that. I really hate having to do this like work. Like it just feels like work going to these, like going and doing these world quests. Um and then it felt even worse when I was like doing the grind to see how it was going to be for Korthia. I was like that was just horrible. It was like, okay, I'll just AFK in the zone the whole day, so I can get all the rares. Like rare farming, I don't know if there's anything more unfun than that. So I hope they really don't do that ever again. Um, I'm okay with the world quests. I think like if it's just 3 a day. I don't know. I did really hate having to log in or feeling like I'm missing out. I think that's the most toxic part about it. Um, and I think that's what they need to like move to get rid of. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about the grinds. I'm personally someone that like I didn't mind islands because there was like a clear goal. And I guess the comparable thing to islands is Torghast. I I just suffer whenever I enter Torghast. I just suffer. Like at the beginning expansion, like I felt like I did have to like log in, do both my wings of Torghast every week. I'm pretty sure for the first 2 tiers that was how it was. And I don't know, it's just so unfun. So I hope they move away from that. The other thing I hope is that they like keep this trend of um listen, like they've been like recently they've been listening to players more about like how we feel about stuff regarding like obviously they undid the covenant restrictions like 12 months too late, the conduit energy thing, um and then with the design of like this last tier, obviously like a lot better, um with the catch up systems. Like the creation catalyst does exist, which isn't like anything they've done in the past, um even though it came like 4 weeks too late. I hope like that's all a sign of a trend where they are like listening to our feedback, and I guess we'll find out tomorrow, but I'm pretty hopeful, and I think that's where I'm gonna leave it for now. So I love you all. Comment under the video if you had any disagreements, thoughts. I wanted to say anything about what you'd like to see for the next expansion. Those are all my thoughts on the topic, pretty much. I know this was a long-winded video, and I'd be extremely impressed if you, at the end, because I was just rambling the whole time. But thanks again, and we'll see what Blizzard has to offer us tomorrow.